Waka, everyone, for joining us. Good afternoon. Welcome to Native Peoples Action Community Fund Smokehouse Stories webinar. These webinar series are focused on community conversations and information sharing about how to get involved in decision-making processes that impact our ways of life. Today, we're talking about the Regional Advisory Councils, also known as RACs, with Charlie Wright and Kevin Whitworth. Charlie is from Rampart, and he's served on the Eastern Interior RAC for 7 years. Kevin is from McGrath and has served on the Western Interior RAC for 3 years. Both are involved in advocacy work. Charlie is the vice chair of the Tanana Chiefs Conference, and Kevin is the executive director for the Kuskokwim River Intertribal Fish Commission. I'm Lorelei Ivanoff, Uvanga Atira Banyok, Unglaklik Miurunga. I'm named after my grandma Banyok, Laura Peterson from St. Mary's, and I'm from the people of Unalakleet and live in Unalakleet. I now serve as the executive director for Native Peoples Action. I'd like to thank Kelly, who is working behind the scenes, ensuring everything runs smoothly today. Thank you, Kelly. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Sure. Ovinga Atiga Kukik. My name is Kelly Schroyer. I'm originally from Kotzebue, Alaska, and I currently live in Eagle River. I just started with Native Peoples Action this past December, and I'm happy to be here and excited to learn more from Charlie and Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. And Kevin and Charlie. Charlie, would you like to begin with an introduction?
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Charlie Wright. I grew up in the village of Rampart, Alaska on the Yukon River, a little northwest of Fairbanks. I spent my whole life out there living a subsistence lifestyle, hunting, fishing, and trapping, and now advocate hard for a way of life. I guess I'll pass it on to Kevin now. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Lorelei. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good to see everybody. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Lorelei, for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here and participating. I'm Kevin Whitworth from McGrath. My mom and dad are Carl and Marcia Whitworth. My dad's from Athens, Georgia. My mom's from Holy Cross in McGrath, Alaska. I grew up in McGrath, just like any young boy, spent a lot of time outdoors, hunting, fishing, trapping. Spent lots of time with my grandparents, my mom and dad out in the woods, and just really enjoying being out and about and learning everything I can from my aunts and uncles. And as a young boy, I went to a science camp with Fish and Wildlife Service. The Fish and Wildlife used to be based in McGrath, Noco National Wildlife Refuge. I went to a science camp, and they really saw this interest in me being out in the outdoors. And at this science camp, and through high school, they hired me as a tech, basically running around in the woods doing different biological work. And then in college, I did the same thing. I ran around with Fish and Wildlife Service, Yukon Delta Refuge, Tetlin Refuge, Alaska Maritime Refuge. That's where I met my wife. Was here in Homer, based in Homer when I was 20 years ago or something like that. And then after college, I worked full time with Fish and Wildlife Service for about 10 years. Selkirk Refuge, Kaikuk Nwitna refuges, and then my last job with Fish and Wildlife was as the deputy refuge manager based in McGrath. And I currently live in McGrath still, hunt, fish, trap, little family, 2 kids. My wife and I are expecting another one here in the next couple days or a week date. My wife, we have a small dog team, and just happy to be here. Thank you. I know that's a long-winded introduction, but it goes into some of my talk later. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you both for introducing yourselves and letting us get to know you a little bit. Exciting about your little baby coming and joining us soon.
Congratulations.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I just want to congratulate.
All right. Yeah. Got to celebrate when we can. So I just wanted to start this conversation talking about RACs. Again, the Rural Advisory Councils. There are 10 of them in Alaska. The councils provide advice and recommendations to the Federal Subsistence Board on subsistence hunting and trapping and fishing issues on federal public lands and waters. And each council has 10 to 13 appointed members, typically serving 4-year terms. Council members are volunteers, but provide a critical role in federal subsistence management. And as mentioned before, Charlie is from Rampart and has served on the Eastern Interior RAC for 7 years. Kevin from McGrath has served on the Western Interior RAC for 3 years. And I'm kind of interested, what initially urged you to seek a seat on a RAC? When did you kind of decide I need to apply, or were you nominated? What was that process like, and what urged you to serve in this way? And either one of you can go first.
I'll start. So growing up at Grandma's Fish Camp and living hunting and subsistence lifestyle. I like to say our way of life instead of subsistence. So if I say that, you know what I mean. So we grew up at Grandma's camp every summer and didn't get to go back to town very often. We learned the whole system of fishing and caring for it and respecting it and changing roles so we could learn the whole system. And it was a really good life, healthy life. And I lived that life. I grew up in it and I raised my own family in it. And then we got to the point where our numbers of salmon started dwindling, and they told us we couldn't fish king salmon no more. First, when I was a teenager, they cut us off from commercial fishing when I was about 16 years old, and I'm 54 now. So in 2013, 14, they stopped us from fishing and king salmon on the river. That really hit me in the heart, and my family and the people that we share with and barter with, and barter for salmon for like muktuk and people from up north, and don't really sell it too much, but always barter. So that was the most important thing to my family, is the well-being we got from the resources from the land. And so I got first involved in the local advisory council in Tanana, Rampart, Manly, AC, and after a while on there, I was got into the RAC, and I'm happy I put myself and got there. I was appointed, of course, but it's been I'm sorry, I just got interrupted, but I learned that this is the process that makes change positive.
Okay, Charlie, I'm gonna try to unmute you for some reason. You're muted.
My phone rang.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. I'm on my phone because I'm traveling right now, not near my computer. But anyway, where I was at was the importance of getting on a RAC and to make positive change for your area. It's the process. I lost you again. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties. I'm sorry, but I'm back. And so I just wanted to say that this is the process, and I kind of lost my thoughts with the interruptions I'm having here. I'm sorry. So I just want to say that it's important to make change for hunting, fishing, trapping, timing. So if you want to make positive change, this is the route. The local AC and the RAC program, the Regional Advisory Council, has been on there a long time now, and I've seen a lot of change. Our resources are dwindling. We're kind of at a tipping point in the interior to, lost our salmon already. Our caribou numbers are way down. Along the Yukon River corridor, the moose has been thinned out tremendously. It's hard to find a moose. Some of our villages are only counting 2 or 3 moose per fall now in the interior, and that's not acceptable. So, of course, we're trying to change through the system, trying to change management strategies to better sustain our way of life. So I can let Kevin say some words, and then we can do some questions and go a little further after a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, I can go. I don't think there was really one thing that urged me to seek a seat on the Western Ontario RAC. It's just been years of, I worked with a federal manager, so I was actually part of like the OSM analysis and stuff. Like as a federal guy, you would always get interviewed, or you would go through the proposal process with a federal person. So I saw a lot of that and the process there, and then definitely saw some frustrations on federal subsistence voting. That sometimes the votes wouldn't go a way that I would like to see it go, or I felt like sometimes they were voting with very little local input or information from traditional people from the local area. And one person that stuck in my mind about who, he didn't urge me, but Ray Collins, he sat on the Western Ontario RAC for a very long time. I don't even know, Charlie might know, but he was on the RAC for a long time here in McGrath. And he retired. There was nobody on the entire Kuskokwim on Western Ontario RAC. I don't think NPACF has anybody right now. So there was a big void. And I really felt like, okay, well, somebody needs to step up and represent the upper Kuskokwim, middle Kuskokwim. And even right now, I'm the only one on the Western Ontario RAC in this big area with only one person. And I can't know all the issues like in the NPACF area or Stony River area. But anyway, when Ray left, I didn't want to, he left a huge void. I know there's no way I'm going to fill his seat, his expertise, years working with people around the country. But anyhow, I did feel like there was a big void there. And I wanted to help with getting local input into the proposal process and the Federal Subsistence Board so they can make good decisions. And I think that it does help to have local people and the local perspective get to the Federal Subsistence Board. And so, so I ended up applying after Ray had retired after 30, 40 years or whatever that was. And I got accepted. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both for that.
Why would you?
At NPA, we have the firm belief that representation really matters. Representation is really important. When any decisions are made regarding our communities and our way of life and our access and sustainability, our voices need to be heard, and we need to be proactive with that too. So thank you both for sharing that. I guess maybe from there we'll go on into what you think the most important role is of the RAC. Again, the regional advisory councils provide advice and recommendations to the Federal Subsistence Board on subsistence, on hunting and trapping and fishing and our ways of life on federal public lands and waters. And so what do you think is the most important role in your words? I mean, I'd like to understand the human, aspect, like in your words, from your perspective and your experience. What have you seen as the important role of these councils and the seat that you hold?
I'll take a jab at that first. I say that every seat is important on the council because every area is different. Like Kevin said, you can't know every area. So even 50 miles makes a big difference. How we fish, how we hunt, the ground we live on. That's why we need as many people as we can get on these councils, the RACs. So a lot of seats are open, and we need people to fill those seats so we're better represented. We're way underrepresented. That to me means that we're not getting a fair share and a good vote on the subjects and problems we're having with our fish and game. So really encourage people to get involved, try to make a difference for your areas and our way of life. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add on to what Charlie said here, and I agree with what Charlie said. Is you got to get the local people who they know the issues the best. They know the proposals, the regulation changes that are they're the ones that are gonna be affected. Us are gonna be the ones affected for these federal changes, and so if you're not involved and you're frustrated, then that's on me. You know, it's not, if you want to see change, you got to be the one to make that change. So definitely I felt like it was pressure on myself, you know, after Ray left, for sure. Ray Collins left, he left a big hole there. So I wanted to see some change. I didn't want to see Federal Subsistence Board kind of go amok and just vote on very little information coming from the local people. So I do feel like the RACs are for that, for people try to get local people involved. And this is just at an advisory level. And I'm not, I don't mean to say it because there are testimonies. People can get involved if you're not on a seat on the RAC, but there are testimony. And I'm not saying testimony is really important as well for this process, because Charlie and I on the seats use these testimonies to help us with our arguments to get to the, you know, to persuade people that, you know, these proposals should go this way or that way. So local people need to be involved very heavily.
I'd like to add a little more. So when we're going through the process at the RAC, there's a public comment and tribal council and village corporation time, and there's not enough people calling in. There's not enough tribes calling in. We really need to step up and start taking control, or not control maybe, but doing our part to fight for our way of life. We're not doing enough. There's not enough people signing up, and so wasn't making enough change at the local AC in my mind, and that's why I put my name in to move up to the RAC. I just wanted to add that part. I have a lot going on. I'm on very many different boards and commissions, and I forget the process of how I got here sometimes, but this is the most important one that I sit on at this time. It's one that makes the biggest change, and I encourage everybody to join us and try to do the best we can for our people going forward, for future generations.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. So from what we're hearing, people need to start stepping up and signing up for testimony, along with applying for one of these seats in order to get the perspectives heard on the various places in Alaska. Alaska's huge, we all know that. And like you said, Charlie, like 50 miles makes a huge difference. And so getting people involved at this level is super important. Can you talk about the importance? I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but staff at the Fish and Wildlife Service at the office, the organization or the agency that facilitates the RAC meetings, they say they're having difficulty filling some seats on various RACs. And can you talk about the importance of having individuals who are knowledgeable of hunting, fishing, and trapping practices involved in serving? I know you touched on this a little, but I wanted to ask that specific pointed question because the agency's having difficulty filling those seats. So can you talk about the importance of having people who are knowledgeable of life involved in serving?
Okay, I can't express how important it is for us all to get involved in this RAC process. If you're trapping and you don't like the way the climate is affecting your trapping going into spring, there's too much water in the spring now when you go beaver trapping. This is the process, and we need those people off the land to come and fill these seats, because they are the knowledge holders. They're the ones that's been out on the ground. They're the ones that's been seeing all the change. So it's very important that the villages send forth their hunters and trappers to people that they know have been living on the land. And through the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, the local ACs, advisory councils, have kind of gone to the wayside because of lack of ability to have meetings, and we're working really hard to get those up and running again, because those are the beginning process of putting forward our concerns, and that's where we find our champions most of the time. That's where I started, and that's how I put in to move up to the RAC. I lived my whole life in the woods, hunting, trapping, and fishing, and providing for many people. So I think that's the best way to find the champions, I call them, is to look at those local ACs, and everybody in most villages know who the hunters and trappers are, and the guys who provide the meat for the potlatches. Those are the guys we're looking for to step forward. Those are the smart ones, are not necessarily smart, but the guys who know all about the land, what it takes to, or I guess I could say what's going on out there the best. They see the changes, they see the numbers, they see the effects the hunters are having on the land. They see the predator problems. So I think that'd be the people that we're looking for to step forward right now. Thank you.
Can I just mention one thing really quick, Kevin? Not to harp on you at all, Charlie, but there's also women. Like there are also women who are hunters and fishers. And my neighbor is one of the most productive hunters in Unalakleet. And she's always out anytime she can get. So just wanted to put that little mention in there.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. And I do stand with you on that. My daughter and a lot of my family members, females, are hunters and kill moose and trap and go geese hunting. And so it can be ladies also.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for saying that.
I wasn't trying to be prejudiced.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the best shots I know are women.
I've got to say, my mom was the one who taught a lot of us how to read the river. You know, she knew where all the little lakes and meadows, and she could smell the moose. She definitely was a really good hunter. And I remember going down the river one time with her on the boat, and I was cruising downriver, and she says, "Stop the boat." And I stopped the boat, and she said, "You smell that?" I just, "No, what is it?" She said, "It's a bull moose. It's around here." And me being real impatient, I says, "Well, we drifted for a little while, but then I said, let's go downstream and look around." And so we did. And coming back home, a friend of mine shot a moose there across the river. And my mom said, "See, you got to be more patient."
That's
Definitely,
right.
Laurel, I agree. My mom and women in the family, they're good hunters. But anyhow, I forgot the question.
Yeah, so you know the agency's having difficulty filling some of the seats on various RACs, and can you just talk about the importance of having individuals who are knowledgeable of hunting and fishing and our ways of life involved in serving?
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. And the way I don't like to answer with a question, but the way I thought of this, think of this is there's probably, if you're a hunter gatherer and you are out in the woods a lot and in federal hunting areas like hunting, fishing, trapping or something, there's probably a proposal out there that you're frustrated with, or some story that your friends get frustrated with. And there's a lot of regulations and proposals out there that people get frustrated with. And if you want change, instead of complaining about it, like I've done in the past as a young guy, you know, I'm learning now that if you want change, I have to voice my opinion and try to make these changes. So definitely these are the people from the river, like Charlie's mentioned, these people from the rural areas, they know the resources best. They know what the change or the proposal is going to have effects on them. So they're the ones that need to voice their opinion. And so, yeah. I'll stop there. I think it was Gandhi had some quote there. He says, "Be the change you want to make in this world." Something like that. I just read that yesterday and it was a coincidence.
Nice.
Laura, could I state something really quick?
Absolutely.
To add on your don't be prejudiced part, I wanted to state that we just got our AC going again. It's called the Tanana Rampart Manly Local Advisory Council, and I'm the chair, and the co-chair is Janessa Newman from Rampart, and the secretary is Samantha Zaray, my daughter from Tanana. So they are involved and they are doing the work, and they're both they all both fished and hunt and provide for their families. So you're 100% right on. I just wanted to let you know that they're involved and they're doing the work, and I'm about ready to, as soon as it gets going smooth, step aside so they can take it over.
Yeah,
So I just want. Mhm. Thank you.
that's some wisdom there, is to not just do this work, but also bring people along who you see can have really positive impact in these spaces. So we definitely not, a part of this is doing the advocacy work and filling these seats and signing up for testimony, but also taking others along with us who might be new to this. So thank you for mentioning that. Can you talk about the responsibilities a little bit and the commitment it takes to serve on a RAC? How often do you meet? Just kind of those nuts and bolts. If someone was interested in serving on their RAC and applying, I think the deadline is March 15th in my notes. If someone was interested in applying, and again, yeah, the deadline is March 15th, and they're unsure of if they have the capacity or the time, because we're all very busy. But what is the commitment? How many meetings are there? What do you need to review before going to the meeting so that you can make good decisions and contribute to the discussion at the meeting? So can you just give a little idea of what it takes to be a RAC member and what it's like to serve in the way that you do?
So no matter what board you're on, you have to do a lot of reading. You have to keep up with the proposals and the changes being put forth. So I think that there's 2 meetings a year, and it's pretty easy to keep up. The coordinator sends you all their information, so you just got to really pay attention to your emails and do your reading and do your little research that you need to do if the changes that are being proposed pertain to you and your immediate area. So just other than that, it's just being able to sacrifice some time from your home and your job and your family, and that sacrifice pays off greatly when you're a part of positive change for your way of life and your community members and the communities that you serve. So it's very important. I think the more the merrier. Just have to do your part. Make sure you do what you need to do to know the subjects before you go. It's 2 meetings a year, and sometimes you get to go to the all RAC meeting when they come up, but it's not a lot of sacrifice compared to the benefits. That's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for leading. Do you want me to share, Lorelei?
Yeah, if you have something to add, definitely. Please do, Kevin. Thank you.
I don't have much to add. I agree with what Charlie was saying. It's not much of a sacrifice. I do have to say that my first term was I filled in for somebody. I think he might have been Ray Collins' seat, actually. I filled in for him on his term to end his term. So I think I did a year or two, but then I had a hard time wanting to apply again because of, like you mentioned, Lorelei, we're all so busy. We all want to be out in the woods, or we all want to, there's work-life balance kind of deal. And I definitely had some hard time wanting to apply, but I went back to those, okay, who's going to be there for our people, or the voices of the local people? Who's going to do this from the local area? And nobody was stepping up. I tried to encourage folks to do it, but nobody, not that I had heard that people were applying. So I applied, and I just had to make time. And it's not a big commitment. We all know the proposals well, because we're always in the field and are the ones that are affected. And what I do, you know, there can be a lot of wildlife proposals, a lot of fish proposals. I concentrate on things that are affecting me the most and the people that I'm familiar with, and that's fish and the salmon crisis that's going on that Charlie had mentioned earlier. And I tend to not get into the wildlife proposals all that heavily. I do vote on them and I get involved, but the salmon crisis is #1 issue here in Western Alaska and Yukon, Kuskokwim regions, and that's where I spend a lot of my time concentrating in the RACs as well. So I pick and choose my battles in that RAC. You don't have to pick them all. But anyways, I want to share that. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you too, Charlie, for your response to that. I think it's really helpful to have a little insight. Just keeping in line with that conversation, Kevin, can you provide kind of maybe an example of a time when there was a proposal that came through your RAC or a proposal that came through when your RAC gave, had your recommendations? And when was a time that you saw it really affect the conversation, the discussion at the level of the Federal Subsistence Board and their decisions and votes? And when was a time that you saw serving in this role really made a difference, and it was really important once it got to the Federal Subsistence Board that I was in this seat, right? And that I was voicing what I was, who I was representing the people in my community. When was a time that you really understood that your role really mattered once it got to the board level?
That's a really good question. And Charlie's mentioned this already too, that, this is a marathon too. So there's a lot of times you don't see those changes right away. It's long-term, small changes, small awards. But one thing, I don't remember if I was on the RAC at that point. I may have been not on the RAC, but the Federal Subsistence Board was voting on whether or not to federalize the Chinook salmon fishery on the Kuskokwim River years ago. And really the testimony and the people from the RACs pushing the Federal Subsistence Board really pushed for what was right. And because there was a crisis and there wasn't enough salmon for all the people to be fishing throughout the entire state of Alaska on this fishery, we had to limit it to only the local people. And so that's what happened. But it was a heavy deal, and testimony pushed it over the edge, and those RACs banded together to make that happen. And that was a struggle, but I was part of the testimony and getting people from the university to testify on our behalf and stuff, but that was a huge one. And nowadays on the Kuskokwim, we don't have to ask the Federal Subsistence Board for federalizing the fishery. It's more delegated to the local fish and wildlife refuge manager, and they can make the decision if they need to federalize or not. So it's changed. I've seen that change, and it's been a marathon, but I'm proud of that change.
Thank you, Kevin. Charlie, did you have anything to add in regard to that?
So there's been so many proposals that we've worked on, and some have brought great change. And like Kevin said, some of them, a lot of this work is slow happening. It's a slow boat, and you just keep picking away at it. And then sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. But last year, there was a proposal to make sure that people setting nets on the river had buoys that showed the buoys to be floating on the surface. And we fought hard because sometimes, and most of the time, when king salmon fishing has happened on the river, there's high water and there's driftwood running. And if we're required to have all of our net visible on the surface of the river, it would fill up with driftwood, and it would not only take our net, but it would fill it up and rip it up. So we fought hard, and we got them to agree to letting us put the 4 to 6 foot lines on those buoys to let our net hang down underneath the water so the drift would go over. We won that one, and that made sure that we're able to fish when we can and fish successfully without losing our gear. So it's just little things like that make big differences to people. Otherwise, we'd lose our gear, and a lot of people don't have enough money to buy new gear. So we got to try to do the best we can. And every time little things come up like that, it's just a traditional knowledge, or the knowledge of the people on the land that know what works and what doesn't. So we have to be there and voice our concerns to help the proposals go forward in a good way to help our people. Just an example.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, both of you. I was reading some of the chats on the side, and Annie Huntington said that it's hard to get people involved, and we have to understand that there are people who are actively subsisting, so actively hunting, fishing, and harvesting day in and day out, and we need to figure out a way to get their voice to the table without taking up their subsistence time, so our hunting and fishing and harvesting time. I know there's a way to provide testimony. So what would you say for people who may not have the capacity to serve on a RAC? How can they get involved? How can they make their voice heard?
That's the local advisory council process. It happens in like Rampart or Tanana, Rampart and Manly, Hot Springs. They have a local advisory council, and we have meetings. You could Zoom in. You could give your concerns to your tribal council and they could do it for you. You could call into the regional RACs and you can at tribal comments and regional village corporation comments, and you could do your comments there if you can't travel. You can send in written comments. There's many different ways.
Yeah, and if I can add a little bit to these many different ways, and I agree, it's hard to find the time if you want to be living off the land. That's a full-time job. I totally know that. But testifying is another way to the Federal Subsistence Board or the RACs. But one of the ways that me just personally that I get a lot of information is just communicating with these people, like the local people in McGrath where I'm from, or Tacotna and Nikolai if I'm crossing paths with them, going to the AC meetings, going to the RAC meetings, and just communicating with the people, and then opening it up to, Annie, if you want to reach out to me and you have something that's on your mind, reach out to your RAC members too, and tell them what you believe and what you think. And so I'm there, and I'm asked that question as a RAC member from other people, the federal folks, is how do you keep in contact with your constituents, the people in your area? And it's, well, I live there. I see them at AC. I see them at wherever, walking down the road, so we talk all the time about fish and wildlife proposals or stuff that's bothering them or me or anyway. But anyway, it's got to be open communications between subsistence users and the RAC members and Federal Subsistence Board.
I'd like to add a little more. Up until now, recently, it was a little harder without internet in the communities to communicate. So that's getting a little bit easier now, where we could get online and send each other messages. So it is getting a little bit easier, and it used to be hard, and it's still a little hard to get a hold of RAC members in small communities when they live out on the land, driving dogs. You gotta just leave messages for them, and hopefully they get back in time for whatever the question may be for them or comments. But it's just it's a lot of work, and the communication is the hardest part. Once you get everybody together, everything goes pretty smooth, but the communication between the city and the communities, the lack of communication seems to be the big problem to me, if in any.
Yeah, we definitely are more connected with social media and Zoom. I mean, this webinar itself is one example. So yeah, thank you for sharing the ways that people can be involved if they don't quite have the time to serve on a RAC. It's really helpful. I guess I kind of would like to hear what's at the heart of why you're doing this. The advocacy work isn't always easy. It can be really difficult. Some of the management systems and processes can be really challenging and complex and sometimes even toxic. And so knowing it can be difficult sometimes, what's at the heart, like, why are you doing this? What is it inside of you, and who inspires you to do your work and to show up and to make your voice heard? What's inspiring you? What's at the heart of serving in this capacity?
I'll start. So our way of life is mental, physical, and spiritual to me. And what bothers me the most about all of it is the losing our salmon and our moose numbers going down, and hearing grandmas cry and seeing grandmas stand on the river and look down river wondering why we don't have any fish. That's what breaks my heart the most. About 10 years ago, I went to Canada. I was at the Yukon River panel. That's when we still had fish, and never thought that we'd lose it. But when I went there and those grandmas were testifying about having no fish and crying, it really hit me in the heart. And then few years later, that came home to my village and affected my mother that way and my family. And it really is important for me to do this work because I do my work for future generations. That's who I think about. I don't think about myself. I think about my grandchildren having the ability to live this healthy lifestyle and experience what I've experienced. It's such a healthy way to live, and it's our way of life. That's what keeps me going.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Charlie, I thank you for stepping up each question. I always like following my elders, so this is I'm thankful for you to step up. You're stepping up all the questions. But anyhow, I think back, you know, that saying of it takes a community to raise a child, or it takes a community to raise a person. You know, I do think back, like when I was a kid, and all those elders who were at the AC meetings, at the RAC meetings, at the Board of Fish, Board of Game meetings, those guys were fighting for me, you know, or the young people today. And I do feel like now it's my turn. I got to give back to the community and give back to the people. And so that's definitely where I believe inspired me to be here on the RAC. And then also, yeah, like Charlie said, for the future generations of my kids, someday maybe the grandkids, or definitely lots of reasons to be here.
For sure. Thank you so much for both of you for saying that. I think we all are here. We're always thinking of generations ahead, right? And ensuring they have the same access and opportunity, and like Charlie said, are able to live this healthy way of life. It's so life-giving, and the land and water provide for us in ways that are immeasurable. I know you both know that, and I know many of the people who have joined us today know that that the land and water are very giving as long as we protect it and stay involved, right? Like you are. So thank you both for that. So as you know, Native Peoples Action Community Fund is committed to protecting our ways of life. We're a statewide Native organization committed to protecting our ability to hunt, fish, and harvest now and for future generations. And part of protecting our ways of life is living our ways of life, teaching our grandchildren values and our relationship with the land and waters and all that's provided. How do we ensure our values and this relationship is passed down and continued? I know, yeah, I just wanted to ask that to each of you because I know you are both committed, and I know you both have that vision. So how do we ensure our values and this relationship is passed down and continued?
By joining the RAC, by expressing your feelings. You can even go as far as your local advisory council if you don't think you can go to the RAC level, and then you can still make a difference from the local level by putting in your proposals, your testimony, your comments, just showing up and speaking gives other people's ideas on how to go forward. Just be part of it. You know, come and talk to people. Like Kevin said, communication is everything. And he said that it used to be the elders fighting for us now. And I tell my people that are my age doing this that we're the new elders in training. And I'm proud of that. I work long and hard to do the best I can for the people. And I think that if enough of us come forward and start doing this work, then those values and ways will go forward and continue to. We just got to keep showing up and doing the work. That's the important part. Sign up for the RAC.
All right, thanks, Charlie. We'll share some information on how to sign up and where you can apply. But just wanted to provide some space for Kevin also to respond to that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Charlie, I've never been categorized as a elder in training yet, so man, you're aging me.
I didn't say your name. I said other people.
Oh, okay. But anyway, the way for me, to keep your question here, just teaching the young kids and being a positive example for the young kids, teaching them the love of the outdoors and teach them everything they can about fishing, hunting, and trapping, you know, and gathering and picking berries and just love of nature. That's a definite big part of what I try to do to try to promote the next generation of people, you know, speaking up for us. My wife, she always says that she's Scandinavian. She says that there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only bad clothing. And so our kids are always out and about, even if it's 40 below, 20 below, it don't matter if raining sideways, they're out and about outside and, you know, they love it. I mean, you just got to keep them comfortable and loving the outdoors. So they're the next generation of advocates for us.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Including our kids and all that we do is so important. And it's how we were raised, right? I think each one of us can say that's how we were raised, just going out and helping our families. So we need to continue that. Thank you both. I think we have time for some audience questions or for questions from people who've joined us. So if you have a question, you can add it to the chat. I think there is a way that you can also raise your hand, and Kelly, who is managing the webinar behind the scenes. Does anyone have a question for Dorothy? Has a question. Let's see. I think you can just unmute yourself, Dorothy. Go on, go ahead.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to the speakers, Robert and Kevin. I just have, you know, I agree with what they're saying. I would like to add in regards to encouraging people to apply. I've been involved with fish and game policies and have fished and hunted myself. Right now I'm not hunting and fishing due to regulations, but you know, have been involved with policy most of my life. And I think it's really important at this time to not only get people that, you know, with the boots on the ground in the regions, in the villages, but also people who are able to understand and change, you know, look at changes in regards to policy and regulations. Those are really important. And, you know, that's kind of where I come from as far as, you know, being on a RAC. I just recently got on the Eastern Interior RAC. And, you know, it's like Charlie said, it's a lot of reading, but it's really important. And also knowing the policies and regulations and which, you know, in which ones that you can change. And, you know, the other thing that I see a lot, you know, in going to meetings is, and, you know, just traveling, you know, people are just really frustrated with the process. And so, you know, not only do we need to be at the table, but we also need to look at, you know, what can we change to make it more effective, to make people's voices, you know, heard. Yeah, it's just, you know, lots of frustration out there. And, you know, we have people, you know, in fish and game that, you know, carry a degree and, or have a degree and, you know, believe that they're the expert. So, you know, we need to change the way of thinking in regards to our Native people and the natural, traditional knowledge and science and chemistry and all of those, and math and everything that, you know, have carried our people for thousands of years. And it's really important that that knowledge be acknowledged as well. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'd like to add a little bit if I can.
Mhm.
The frustration that Dorothy talked about is real. When I first got into onto the RAC, I wanted to see change happen right now. And I thought the same way. It's not working, but it's a slow process. And even though you get discouraged, you just got to keep going forward. You can't quit. The change comes a little at a time sometime, and you just have to keep going and stay strong and keep moving forward for your people and your way of life. Don't get discouraged. Just keep trying, and you see the little changes, and sometimes you win big and sometimes you lose big, but the little changes come slow sometimes. So we just got to keep pushing for the future generations.
If I can add a little bit too. Thank you, Dorothy. Appreciate that. And I agree, especially what you were saying about the RACs are an advisory role to the Federal Subsistence Board. They're the ones that actually have the vote, decision-making management vote. And it's frustrating, you know, to be in an advisory role as a person who wants to see these changes. It would be better, like you said, if we could change policy so that our voices are more of at a management level, you know, and actually have a vote or co-management, whatever you want to call it. But it's definitely frustrating being an advisory role, but it is worth it. It's a step in the right direction. I do agree that having a seat, even if it is just advisory, and then taking the slow road, like Charlie says, this is a marathon, and celebrating those little rewards. I mean, this work, you could be bogged down in the negativity forever and just be totally depressed. But you got to find rewards in the little bitty successes, like Charlie has mentioned, whether that's just, I don't even know examples, but there's a lot of them, but you have to celebrate those little rewards and celebrate those little successes so you can maintain yourself in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a question from Janessa. She said, what piece of advice would you both give for aspiring advocates and champions for our ways of life? But before we get to that, I'm just going to add to the chat the link where you can apply if you want to apply to a RAC seat in your area. So I'm going to just include some information, some phone numbers, and the link to apply. So again, the question from Janessa, what piece of advice would you both give for aspiring advocates and champions for our ways of life?
I'll go first. I'd like to tell Janessa that, like what I just said, keep showing up, keep putting yourself into places where you sign up for the RAC, keep expressing yourself, keep testifying, keep putting up the good fight and communicating with your people who you know are on these boards already. I thank Janessa for that question. And I know she's putting that out there for other people because I know she's doing the good work already. And I'm proud of the young people who are stepping up and signing up. She's one of them. And it just keep pushing and putting yourself out there and asking the hard questions and doing the hard work. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but that's what we have to do to make change. Better to do the tough conversations and say the tough things and ask the tough questions. Just keep pushing forward. Thank you.
Kevin, did you have anything to add?
Not too much. I mean, I agree with what Charlie's saying. Somebody within the federal government told me once that, you know, sometimes the federal government needs to be reminded of what they're supposed to do. And if there's nobody on our side of the board, basically reminding them, then they're not going to do it. So we have to be the voice. We have to push for what we believe in and with the change we want to see, so the federal government they know it, whether that's Federal Subsistence Board or employees within the federal government. Yeah, thank you.
We need another thing I'd like to add is we need those seats filled. There's a lot of seats that are unfilled in these 10 racks. The people in their areas gotta get this information and look it up on the internet, figure out how many seats are open, and push your people to fill them. We need your voices. We need people at the tables. We need village tribes to be calling in and making comments. We need village corporations to be calling in and supporting the tribes on these comments and changes going forward. We need to all start doing our part, or as much as we can. Thank you.
Yeah, the more we unify, the more that we can get things moved, right? That
Right.
unity is important in this work because, yeah.
And know your sister racks. Know the racks that are near yours.
Mhm.
Talk to them. Look at their meeting. Listen in on their meetings and help each other fight for the same things. If you guys have the same problems, join together in unity for strength. Support each other.
Mhm.
That's the way to go forward. In unity and numbers, we can move mountains.
Yes, very wise words. Thank you for that, Charlie. Some information, the deadline to apply for the Subsistence Regional Advisory Council seats is March 15th, so it's coming up. Council membership appointments are for 3-year terms. Typically, there are approximately 42 seats open for appointment among all the councils. So if you are at all interested, apply. You can apply at the link that we provided in the chat. That's doi.gov/subsistence/regions, or you can contact Katarina Wessels at, is it Wessels? at the Council Coordination Division Supervisor at the Office of Subsistence Management. And her phone number is in the chat. It's 800-478-1456 or 907-786-3885. Let's see, her email is not included, but you can give her a call if you'd like to apply or nominate someone. Again, the deadline is March 15th to apply for the Subsistence Regional Advisory Council seat.
So I got the application timeline in front of me if you'd like me to read it off.
Go ahead, Charlie. We have a few more minutes. Yeah.
Application timeline, January, deadline for submitted membership applications and nominations. February to March, regional panels conduct interviews. June and July, Federal Subsistence Board reviews panel reports and develops recommendations. Secretaries of the Interior and Agriculture review recommendations and appoint members to the Regional Advisory Councils August through December 2nd. December 3rd, Secretary of the Interior issues appointment letters. And that's the timeline.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar. Feel free to sign up for our newsletter linked in the chat and on Facebook to keep up to date on these issues. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event. A huge thank you to Charlie and to Kevin for the time that you've taken to join us today and to give us some insight on the regional advisory councils. It's really, yeah, I'm just so grateful that you were able to take the time and use your energy today to give us some information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really important. I appreciate you all.
Yes, thank you, Lorelei. Thank you for advertising this too. I see like 5 members of my family. They've never been interested in my work, but I see my niece Victoria's on this phone call. My mom's here. I've never
Hi.
seen that before, Lorelei. Great job advertising. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. All right, join us at the next event. All of that information we share on Facebook and our social media. We have Instagram also, so please follow us and we'll see you at the next event. Thanks so much for joining the Smokehouse Stories webinar.
Donabathi.